want to go to Singapore now, and Jayant Menon is a visiting senior fellow with the Iseas Yusof Ishak Institute. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
So just a short time ago, Presidents Trump and Xi wrapped up their high-stakes meeting on a potential trade deal. We're still learning about the details, with President Trump revealing on Air Force One that the two nations agreed to a one-year trade deal that could be signed soon, he said, and would include China buying large amounts of US soybeans in return for reduced tariffs. And President Trump said the rare earth minerals issue has been settled. Now, we don't know any more details than that. How significant is all of this, and what would a successful trade deal between the two nations look like?
I think, first of all, it is significant. Tensions have been rising, there have been flare-ups. So this certainly reduces the temperature all around, and that's always a good thing. We'll have to look at the details when they're finally available. President Trump, in his usual style, has been, quite positive and, maybe exaggerating a little bit. But we haven't heard much, or we haven't heard at all, actually, from the Chinese side. So things will have to be confirmed on both ends. But I think it's a good sign, certainly. But we should also be a bit careful about where we are now. I think we're just returning to where we were before all of this started. There were no restrictions on rare earths. China was buying a lot of soybeans before Liberation Day. So all of this is just a return to where we started. And so that needs to be kept in perspective as well.
And this meeting was meant to offer a framework for the two nations, wasn't it? But does that make the two leaders equals, given President Xi was the only global leader to stand up to Donald Trump and his trade tariffs? Or is that exactly what gives President Xi the edge and perhaps more leverage in these negotiations?
I think you're right. I mean, we saw that China wasn't going to be bullied. They weren't going to be pushed around, and it's worked. We've seen President Trump actually pause tariffs, bring in exemptions, change rates without China doing very much except to respond in a very measured way each time there was some change in the U.S. position. So I think China has held its own in these negotiations, and it can, because unlike many other smaller trading partners, they are mutually dependent. China is very important to the U.S., and it's not very sensible to think of it as a very one-way relationship just because China sells a lot more than buys from the U.S. Trade is mutually beneficial, and that's the starting point in understanding these relationships.
And of course, President Trump is focusing very much on trade and tariffs. But there are many other critical issues to determine with China, aren't there? Including its military aggression, Taiwan's independence, cyber attacks, and of course, the growth of Beijing's nuclear weapons program. Do you think that's why President Trump raised the issue of nuclear testing in a Truth Social post just before his meeting with President Xi?
I never try and read President Trump's mind, but I think this might be all part of the negotiating tactic. I was expecting that something might even come up about Taiwan, where I think there was some discussions in the press about how the U.S. might change its position a little bit. So far it's always said it would not support independence for Taiwan, but there was a hope that it might change that wording to say that it would actually oppose Taiwan independence. That might still come out. We haven't actually had all the details. That could be one of the non-economic issues that's tied in with all of this. But I think the point here that you raise also comes back to the underlying issue behind all of this, and that's preserving US hegemony. And that's what's driving this whole trade war. The last time there was a pretender to the throne, Japan, they were quickly brought to heel because Japan needs security from the US. China does not.
Jayant Menon in Singapore, many thanks for joining us. Appreciate your analysis.
Thank you so much.